Locked On Commanders was on hand in Washington when they got their mandatory minicamp started on Tuesday, and we heard from head coach Ron Rivera to kick it all off. What was said, seen, and our analysis right now on the Locked On Commanders podcast.
Are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome in, Commanders fans, to the Locked On Commanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Locked On Commanders is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. I'm David Harrison, writer covering the Washington Commanders for Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation. My partner, Chris Russell, the Rooster, is one half of the Russell and Medhurst Show, which can be found on the Team 980 Monday through Friday from 3 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time, or anytime on the Audacy app. To be fair, Chris, some probably feel like you should be fined from every now and then. You can find us on Twitter at DHarrison82, at WrestleMania621, and at LO Commanders.
Just watch and listen, and I will gladly pay some sort of nominal fine. Once again, we thank you for making the Locked On Commanders podcast your first listen and or your first watch of the day. Today's episode, David, is brought to you by Blue Nile. Make your moments sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On Commanders listeners get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement rings. Use the promo code Locked On at checkout. All right, David, earlier on Tuesday, we were live at Veteran Minicamp in Ashburn, Virginia at the Washington Commanders team headquarters, where Ron Rivera spoke to us bright and early in the morning. He didn't bring bagels. He didn't bring coffee. He didn't bring orange juice. It was before practice. You and I were there. And as for a few big picture thoughts from the big boss man, he said a lot of things. I don't know if we learned a whole lot more than we probably were already guessing or leaning towards, but what was your big picture takeaway from the head coach?
I mean, really, it was exactly what I expected, right? So, I wrote up a shell article the night before for Commanders Country for the SI.com Fan Nation site that I write for. And it literally, in the tag, like the headline didn't change, the tagline didn't change, and the bulk of the body of the article didn't change, basically saying that Ron Rivera wanted to clear the air with media before the practice got started, so that after practice, the focus could be on football. Now, of course, and we'll get into this here in a minute, there were still, topics brought up to the players and everything, as I'm sure they expected after practice. But by and large, the focus was football, right? And I think that's what Coach Rivera really wanted to get accomplished. He basically came out and said, look, the fine was levied. It was a $100,000 fine levied to Coach Del Rio. Ron said that was his decision. That was what he wanted to do after speaking with Coach Del Rio, basically based off of what the impact on the team was. And he made it very clear. This wasn't about, violating Coach Del Rio's First Amendment rights. It wasn't about even necessarily the words alone that Jack said. It was the impact that the words had on the organization. Now, what that impact really was, honestly, Chris, we don't know. We could estimate, we could make conjecture, we could assume some things, but at the end of Ron Rivera's statement, he said, that's all I'm going to say about it. If you have football questions, we'll move into football. But that's really it. So nobody really had the opportunity to say, okay, like what impact led to the fine specifically, like what happened within the organization after Wednesday's comments that led to this fine? Because if it's not just the words alone, again, what happened inside the walls of the organization that led to the fine? That's something that honestly Ron Rivera probably wouldn't have answered anyway, but because he kind of shut the door on that part of the conversation anyway, really weren't able to get an answer on that part of it. Chris, you're muted.
All right, David. Yeah, I apologize, for that. Here's the thing. Ron called it a distraction, but honestly, I think it was, I'm going to use stronger words. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare for Ron to deal with. It was a nightmare for the organization to deal with. It was a nightmare for players to have to go through. And certainly from us in the media and the fan base, right? Nobody wanted to be talking about this. Zero people. And Ron went to a family wedding, I believe his son, like overseas, and had to be dealing with this while doing that.
Yeah.
And again, people can sit here and say whatever they want, whatever political affiliation, whatever they view, it doesn't matter. It's over, whatever. They made the decision and they tried to explain it as, again, not a violation of his free speech, meaning Jack Del Rio's, but again, because of a distraction, I'll call it a nightmare. Here's the one rap that I'll take from this. I'm not exactly sure why Ron went as deep as he did after, again, he tried to shut it down several times on the First and Second Amendment. I mean, he did a sermon like I haven't heard on two amendments to the Constitution. I mean, especially the Second Amendment, gun control versus gun safety. I mean, I was just blown away. I was standing there like, wait, is this real life? Is he a football coach? It was crazy. I would have liked Ron to not be as rigid on the football questions and the Jack questions, and just answer them short and briefly and without a whole lot of detail, as opposed to trying to shut them down. But I just couldn't believe I was getting a sermon in the First and Second Amendment, especially the Second Amendment part. I was like, whoa, what is this?
That was a little surprising at first when you started talking about the Second Amendment, but again, it's a social topic that has come up, unfortunately, again in this country that a lot of people are talking about. And I think where Coach Rivera, and again, I don't want to put words into his mouth for him. So just to be clear, this is what I think is what kind of sparked that kind of trail off that we had there. Is he was talking about moving forward as a team, and the team is going to move forward with one goal in mind, work together to get past the issue and to get back to business, and that's what they wanted to do, which is great. And again, the Second Amendment right now is being talked about, and gun control versus gun safety, and the government is, and hopefully people are working, bipartisan bills are being presented, and all these other things. So I think what he was trying to do is kind of tie in the look, our country is doing it, our team is doing it, let's all kind of do it together, and it kind of trailed off into this Second Amendment, conversation, because he recently read an article. I don't know if it was written by a veteran or a veteran was just interviewed or quoted in it, whatever it was, but a veteran was talking about gun control and all this other stuff. So it was interesting to him, and kind of, probably something he didn't plan on talking about. He even said at one point, like, he went deeper into that than he intended to.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think I see the connection, basically just trying to emphasize the teamwork in moving past conflict instead of continuing to revolve around it. And, there's going to be disappointment that Ron didn't say more. There's going to be some people who wanted him to maybe criticize Jack more publicly and all that. There's some people who think that the fine was egregious. And I think really at the end of the day, from Coach Rivera's standpoint and PR standpoint, there's really no right answer, right? Like in this type of a situation, he's at the podium. It's football practice. It's 8:00 in the morning. They're about to go out there and run drills. There's nothing that Ron Rivera, I don't think, can do to make both sides of this conversation say, oh, you know what? We agree with everything you're saying. We're happy now with the end result. So honestly, kind of cutting it off and saying, you know what? We're done. Everybody's already mad. We're not going to make you more mad. And we know we're not going to make you happy with one fail or, one slick press conference. So we're just going to give you what we have, and we're going to move on from here. And I think that's what they did. And speaking of people kind of dropping the gauntlet, Chris, and saying, this is what we're doing, and this is how we're going to do it. Terry McLaurin, following through on the projected or predicted holdout, not here on day one of minicamp.
Yeah, and not expected to be on Wednesday or Thursday either. I mean, that's not a surprise at this point. David, I would say this. Everybody has boiled this down to simply, well, they'll get it done. They're just far apart. This is a negotiation, all that stuff. I mentioned this on my solo episode Sunday night into Monday morning, and when we were separated. So I don't know if you've already heard this diatribe, but I'll make it as quickly as I can. I think there's more here than just a contract extension, just a contract negotiation. I think Terry's a little annoyed, miffed, bothered, whatever, that they've added Curtis Samuel at a high price, De'Ami Brown in the third round, Dax Milne in the 6th round last year or 7th round or whatever it was. And now Jahan Dotson in the 1st round, in the middle of the 1st round. And if it wasn't Jahan, it would have been somebody else. I think he's a little miffed, annoyed that maybe in combination with that, Washington perhaps, and the belief that I've talked to some people with, is that they are lowballing him, that they started the negotiations way off of what the fair market price is, which I think most people would identify as somewhere in the neighborhood, plus or minus, of A.J. Brown's contract with now the Philadelphia Eagles. They acquired him via trade. It's roughly about $25 million per year on an extension. That's believed to be, and the market would tell us, the neighborhood for Terry McLaurin. Well, if Washington, and I don't know this, is starting the negotiations at 18 or 19 or 20 million, that's way below what the believed market value is.
Yeah.
And you combine those two things, and maybe Terry's getting a little annoyed. And I think he is.
I mean, it's such a complex dance that these agents and these GMs and teams do, and it's it's a possibility for sure. I mean, you look at like everything, and honestly, I hadn't even really thought about De'Ami Brown. I knew, Curtis Samuel. I don't think that would be alone would be enough to kind of ruffle Terry's feathers. I think having a co-worker or a co-running mate to play with, and a teammate of his back in the day and all that stuff would be attractive. But then, yeah, adding De'Ami Brown, going out and adding Jahan Dotson. But from an organizational standpoint, I don't know, like this team also almost couldn't draft a defensive player. We talked about this in the build up to the NFL draft. They had drafted so many defensive players in the 1st round. Like eventually you kind of think you have to dedicate something to the offensive side of the ball so they go do it. And when you look across the board, I mean, really, where are they going to draft a player on the offense in the 1st round? If it's not quarterback, it's probably going to be wide receiver, right? So it kind of all comes to make sense. I wonder about the lowballing thing too. You wonder what Terry's camp is asking for as well. And then there are some contracts that help that, like Christian Kirk's contract is going to support Terry getting more money. But then you look at like Chris Godwin and the contract he ends up taking. I wouldn't even say getting, he ends up taking. But basically, I mean, we can chalk that up probably to the Brady effect, really. So, I mean, it's such a complex dance. And then it's not even so much just the annual average value, but also how much of that is guaranteed versus incentive based, and all these other things. So until either side, eventually leaks a number to somebody, that's basically what we can go off of. But I mean, it certainly seems to make sense. It's disappointing not to see him here. But I think the big thing Coach Rivera said is he's not necessarily concerned about it. Carson's a veteran. Terry's a veteran. We've seen Terry do better, to do well with worse quarterbacks and less time to really get used to them as well. Mm-hmm. So I think as long as Terry is there for training camp, which you still have about a month or so to get him there, I think this is fine. Now, if we get into training camp and there's still a holdout, I think that's where you start getting a little bit worried.
That will be the big question, and certainly one of the big issues we'll be tracking over the next couple of weeks. All right, David, coming up, a look at the Commanders offense. That's right. We get to talk football, baby, from Tuesday's OTA practice. That's next on the Locked On Commanders podcast.
Some players on the field, and we're going to do that thanks to our friends at BlueNile.com. You can celebrate all of life's special moments, from creating the custom engagement ring of her dreams to gifting a classic and timeless jewelry piece, all at prices you won't find at a traditional jeweler. Whether you're ready to pop the question or you're celebrating a milestone moment, find jewelry as unique as her with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. Build the engagement ring of her dreams or celebrate life's special moments with fine jewelry. No matter what you're looking for, Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7. So make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. Locked On Commanders listeners, you get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement rings. So again, use the promo code Locked On at BlueNile.com. That's promo code Locked On. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today.
All right, thanks for making Locked On Commanders your first listen and your first view each and every day. Guys, the ultimate NBA mock draft starts June 16th. That's right, that's coming up in just a matter of days. With over 50 insiders, nothing equals the ultimate NBA mock draft. The Locked On NBA Big Board Draft experts, plus the Audacy Insiders first pick. Again, is June 16th. Search Ultimate NBA Mock Draft and follow now so you don't miss a pick. All right, so David and I, again, we're on the ground for mandatory minicamp practice. We are expected to be there Wednesday and Thursday as well, as the Washington Commanders wrap up this part of the offseason. So, David, for our thoughts on what stood out from the offense, we always start, and we have to start with Carson Wentz, the starting quarterback. I thought he was mostly good on Tuesday. I thought it was much better than he was last week. I don't remember a turnover. He did hold on to the ball a couple of times, a little bit too long, in my opinion. A couple of double pumps, maybe holding on. Again, just a little bit too long. One time he dumped one into the ground on a dead play because he didn't have anything. But I'll say this, and I'll start with this. Not only was he better today, but that's exactly the kind of decision I think they want him to make, and I want to see, and I think you'll want to see, instead of taking a bad sack that knocks him out of field goal position or making a dumb play like he did at the end of the Indianapolis, Tennessee game during the regular season last year in the shadow of his own end zone. I want him to live for another play and for them to live for another play as opposed to him making a bad decision.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I've said it before and I'll continue to say it. People are going to hear me say this a lot as we get through training camp. I hate, hate when quarterbacks take practice sacks, meaning they're not getting hit, but defenders are flying past them, maybe even touching them on the shoulder real quick, or some defenders will actually run by and go sack and kind of signify that, hey, I would have got you if this was real contact. And the quarterback stands there in the pocket and continues to let this happen. Finally fires the ball to a guy who's now open because the defensive back just simply can't stay with the guy for that long, and then celebrates. Yeah, what a good play, what a good throw. Now that's not what Carson did, right? He did take some practice sacks and then threw the ball anyway, but there was no fist pumping or high fiving or yeah, we got him on that one, guys. But you know, again, and context matters, right? Carson hasn't thrown to these guys since Wednesday, you know, so you have about a week or so since he's last thrown to his receivers, at least in some sort of official capacity. So it's okay. You want to see the quarterback get loose, get the arm going, get the ball flying through the air a little bit. I'm okay with that. What I do like is, like you said, dumping the ball out on a dead play. Don't force it into traffic if you don't absolutely have to. Now, to a certain extent, this is where you want to see mistakes get made, right? If you have a 4 interception day, you want to have a 4 interception day at practice, not in the game. But you also would rather just see the no interceptions. And then, like you said, that's what we saw today was no interceptions from Carson Wentz. And as insignificant or maybe significant it is, it's the first time that we have seen, media has seen a practice from Carson Wentz that did not include an interception. So that's at least some sort of a positive. If, you know, again, not telling you to make him a first round pick in your fantasy league, but it is something that I think is good and a much better performance from the last time we saw him last Wednesday with, again, 2 interceptions and kind of helping lead De'Ami Brown into some unfortunate contact. On the flip side, Chris, I would say the worst quarterback of the day today or on Tuesday, Sam Howell. Like he looked rough out there. I mean, he looked like a rookie, which is unusual because honestly, we've been saying he really hasn't looked like a rookie quarterback, but today he looked like a rookie.
Yeah, no doubt about it. He was intercepted. Yeah, and we were just talking about like at practice, right? We were looking at some of the guys that are deeper on the roster, and one of the guys that picked him off was Trey Walker. So that wasn't that wasn't good. I mean, again, like you said, you live with some of these mistakes. He's a rookie. Veterans make mistakes. It's going to happen. But certainly I would agree with you that, Taylor Heineke probably looked more like the number 2, and Howell clearly, at least for one day, looked like number 3. Now we'll see what happens the rest of this week. David, I wanted to bridge off of that and kind of go into a couple of the quick things with the wide receivers. De'Ami Brown was back at practice. You mentioned the throw from Wentz last week. We all know the hard hit, all that. So that was good. Now, what wasn't good is he dropped a pass that was basically dropped right in his breadbasket, tight coverage by William Jackson III, but it was a really good throw from Wentz. So that was one thing that stood out to me. And I know you were watching the wide receivers closely, and we did actually get to see Curtis Samuel participate in the second team period after skipping the first, and we weren't even sure he was going to play. But you saw something out of the wide receiver group that I was interested in, if you could expand upon that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I was just watching, some releases, and again, everybody has kind of their own football theology, and some people that I've read say that the release off the line of scrimmage is the most important thing that a wide receiver can do, and in a game of inches and seconds and milliseconds, that release could be the difference between getting open or being covered. completing a pass or an interception. And there was just some nuances there. Jaquez Ezzard, I hope I'm saying his full name correctly. Like, he honestly is a guy, number 84, a guy who a lot of people probably aren't paying attention to, might be a long shot to even make the roster. I'll say, Chris, his release off the line of scrimmage is smooth. I mean, he's got his front leg firm, his back leg is kind of bent. He really doesn't have any wasted motion in there. As soon as the ball is snapped, he is pushing off that back leg, rolling off the front foot, and he is just into his motion. His cuts are clean. He doesn't lose a lot of acceleration. I see him setting up defenders, not getting a lot of targets out there, you know what I mean? But when he's running out there in the open field, he is taking defenders with him. That's going to open up things. I saw a nice pass, actually. I can't remember which exact team, quote unquote, that it was, but it was Cole Turner making the catch. He's done some second team stuff as well. And Ezzard actually ran through that zone and cleared out 2 defenders with his route running. And Cole Turner ends up finding himself by himself about 5-6 yards off the line of scrimmage. Something that I saw in first round pick Jahan Dotson. And again, it's, as of right now, it's kind of one of those things where it's a thing you notice, but it's not a thing that's a problem. He seems to have a little bit of a wasted kind of emotion when the ball is snapped. Instead of kind of rolling off that back or pushing off that back foot, rolling off the front foot, he kind of does a little stutter step and not just impress. I mean, impress, you got to come to balance and all that. We understand that. But even when he's in off coverage or facing off coverage, he kind of has this little stutter to his get off that kind of slows him down off the line of scrimmage. Now, fortunately for him, and Cam Curl talked about this a little bit today after practice or on Tuesday after practice as well, his speed and acceleration into and through his routes makes up for it. But you just kind of wonder if that stutter step gets met with press coverage or gets met with an aggressive defender who can also knock him off his routes, how much does that impact things moving down the line?
Yeah, no doubt about it. One other quick note that we wanted to point out, Logan Thomas is obviously not able to participate in any of the team drills. He's out there. David, I love talking to him. I don't know how you feel. I think he's so smart and cool and just really fun to talk to. But he said, look, I'm shooting for week 1, but I'm not going to be reckless about it. If he's not ready, if he doesn't feel right, they're not going to over push it. And the one quote that I love that he said, and I know you also tweeted about it too, at DHarrison82, I'm at WrestleMania621, is he said, John Bates is a 10-year vet in a 2-year veteran's body. I love that quote. It just tells you what they think of John Bates, especially inside the position group.
Absolutely. I mean, most impressive member of the rookie class last year, according, to me anyway. And he's looked very, very good. Had a very nice catch today as well during team drills. He's looked really good in camp along with Cole Turner. I mean, Logan Thomas, they've got tight ends. Like, this team has tight ends. You don't got to worry about that.
They may not have enough bodies to get through a full camp if an injury comes up, but we'll see where we are in August as training camp commences. All right. Coming up next, again, David and I with some thoughts on the defense and who we heard from on Tuesday. But first, we tell you about Built Bar. That's right. You know, our friends at Built are always coming out with amazing new flavors. Well, guys, here's something truly cool. They've outdone themselves with their new mud pie flavor. That's right. For the first time ever, Built is introducing their new mud pie flavor in both mud pie bar and, you got it, the mud pie puffs. Oh, not sure what a mud pie puff tastes like or a bar? Well, if you're a chocolate fan, you'd better prepare yourself. The new mud pie bar is rich whipped cream chocolate mousse, smothered in 100% chocolate and topped with cookies and cream crumble. Oh, it sounds so good. I can't wait to get my hands on them. You got to try the mud pie as soon as possible, and you need to hurry because the mud pie bar and the mud pie puff are only available for a limited time. Visit built.com right now to taste it all for yourself. Low in calories, low in sugar, high in protein. You know the deal. It's all from our friends at Built. Try the mud pie bars and the mud pie puffs and everything else that Built has waiting for you at built.com by using the promo code LOCKED15, and you're going to get 15% off your order. Again, promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com.
Final segment here for Locked On Commanders on today's episode. Commanders fans, if you love our podcast, you'll love this even more. Now, you can watch the Locked On Commanders podcast on the WUSA 9 Plus app. WUSA 9, your CBS affiliate in Washington, D.C. our partner over at Tegna, has a new stream app that is a game changer for local news and sports in the DMV. Download WUSA 9 Plus app now from your Roku or Amazon Fire TV stick. Very excited for what's happening around the network and there with WUSA 9. Chris, someone else who's very excited, Jamin Davis, humbled by his first season, is what he called his first season, rookie season, a humbling experience. That's a quote from Jamin Davis. Said, look, there's nothing I can do about that now. And now I'm paraphrasing, but nothing I can do about that now. Just got to learn from it. Take it. Says he's playing faster. He's playing with more confidence. I won't say fully admitted that, not having to worry about trying to compete to be the Mike and call the plays and set the defense is helping him, but kind of admitted that, not having to set the plays and having Cole Holcomb next to him is making his life easier. But that doesn't mean it's all, rainbows and butterflies for Jamin Davis. Still some things he's got to work out on the field.
Yeah, no, and listen, just because it didn't work out at Mike this past year doesn't mean he can never do it or he'll never be able to do it. And he admitted, like you said, he's thinking less and reacting and playing more. And that's what you hear from players as they go through their career. We heard it from, I think, De'Ami Brown as well on Tuesday. You think less, you're more free flowing. Again, you don't want to be reckless, but you just know more. And Cam Curl also, I think, mentioned the same thing. You know more, you think less, you operate faster, smoother, all of that stuff. One play that jumped out to me, and I hate to be negative, but I was right there watching it. And I think I had maybe a slightly better view than you, but you were like right there with me. So I'm not sure what you saw on the play, but Jamin Davis was lined up on the right edge of the defense over J.D. McKissic, who had split out from the backfield to almost line up in almost like a tight end type split. And he was on the left. And J.D. McKissic off the snap, David, broke from the left side of the formation to the right side of the formation, almost in a shallow drag cross type route. And Jamin Davis, I think, took a false step, maybe to his right and to the outside off the line of scrimmage. So JD beat him easily, quickly, cleanly. And then when Jamin quickly recovered, he got picked by an underneath linebacker, and he couldn't get to J.D. McKissic, who he was in man coverage for. And obviously J.D. made the catch. Who knows how many yards it would have gone for? Maybe it's insignificant, but to me, it just showed that, look, he might be playing freer and he might be more, ready to contribute on a consistent basis, but he's still got a ways to go. And, oh, by the way, if J.D. McKissic can do that, so can a bunch of other very talented backs or people of that ability can do that. So that's one thing to keep an eye on as Jamin Davis kind of makes his step and takes a step, hopefully in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's good to put those things on film again in practices and training camps, because you can look at them, you can go over them with your coach, and you can come out there and do it better, hopefully next time. Heard on that play from the offensive side of the peanut gallery, the people standing around waiting for their reps, got him is basically what was said before JD McKissic got that ball.
All right, I didn't hear that.
Very good play by JD on that one. Chris, back on the field for the entire practice, Daron Payne, who had been there in OTAs warming up, doing some individual stuff, but then he would leave for team activities. Again, he's seeking a new contract as well. Denied the opportunity to really tell us how those negotiations were going. Basically, really every question he was asked. He was asked about his thoughts on Jack Del Rio, of course. He was asked about his contract. He was asked about everything. Basically, what Daron Payne said is, I play football. That's what I do. I'm here to play football. You could tell Daron really didn't want to be there, but he's kind of, he didn't say he was only there so he didn't get fined, but you can tell he really wasn't feeling it. And look, I don't necessarily blame these guys if they don't want to talk to us all the time. A little bit different than Cam Curl, Chris, who one of my favorite moments of the press conference. I don't know if everybody agrees, but Cam Curl basically, again, saying that he liked to keep internal conversations internal, was asked why. And he said, I'm going to paraphrase here, but he said, because the media twists things or likes to spin things. We all laughed. I don't know if all of us laughed out of actual being humored, but I found it funny.
Yeah, it was by far my most popular tweet of the day, because I think the fans, unfortunately and unfairly, quite honestly, hate the media and blame us a lot for a lot of the stuff that goes around on this organization. And I think that's, I think that's beyond unfair, because we don't create any of it. We might have to talk about it. We might have to cover it. We might have to ask questions about it, but we don't start it. We don't ignite the fire. So I'll respectfully disagree with Cam Curl on a lot of that stuff, especially when it comes to the Washington Commanders media and the Washington, D.C. media. That being said, I want to go back to Daron Payne for a second. On one play, David, I mean, listen, we know how talented he is. On one play, he took on what appeared to be a triple team, a converging triple team of protection, and shredded them. And he got through and pushed them back. So to me, Daron Payne's still like a bull in a china shop. When he's fresh, when he's ready, when he wants to be in the backfield, he absolutely can be. So those were a couple of the things that we saw from the defensive side. We'll have more coverage for you on both sides of the ball coming up Wednesday and Thursday from the Inova Sports Performance Center. All right. We want to thank you guys again for making the Locked On Commanders podcast your first listen and your first view of the day. Come on back again for that next episode. Again, we will be boots on the ground in Ashburn, Virginia with the Washington Commanders. Now make your second listen and view the Locked On NFL podcast. Our national NFL experts and insiders keep fans dialed in with the biggest stories and the latest news from around the league, because an offseason doesn't equal a break in the action. Follow Locked On NFL every day on the Audacy app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. You want to hop in, 301-615-3577 on the voicemail line, or lockedonwashingtoncommanders@gmail.com. That's going to do it for us today, Commanders fans. Thanks again for joining us. We're free and available on all platforms. For David Harrison, who's covering the Washington Commanders for SI.com's Fan Nation, I'm Chris Russell, on behalf of the Russell and Medhurst Show on the Team 980 and the Audacy app. We'll be back right here on the Locked On Commanders podcast.